Hello everyone, my name's Nathan Wade. This is my Popular Press video. The topic is the science of decision making. Now this particular topic resonates with me a little bit as I just recently moved up to the Philadelphia area for work and I had to figure out a place to live. I hadn't had a chance to read the article or watch the video yet, and as a result, I had some difficult decisions that I was supposed to make that I put off, and now I'm just staying in an Airbnb for the month. However, now that I've been able to read the article and do this work, I feel pretty confident that I'll be able to find a good long-term solution to complete my move up here. So let's get going. My video is based on the article by Lisa Solomon, How the Science of Decision Making Will Help Us Make Better Strategic Choices. In this article, it's mostly an interview with Brie Lincolnholder. She's a neuroscientist. She's also the director of Worldview Stanford. Worldview Stanford is an organization that creates learning experiences and media for professionals, for everyday people. And its aim is to get the information that academia brings in and the data that they would traditionally keep to themselves and doesn't get out into the real world, and take it and send it out to real world decision makers to help them make proper decisions or better decisions with the information that they receive from all the studies that are happening at universities all over the country. So decision makers, when we think of decision makers, oftentimes it's a CEO or a president of a company, someone that's very high up in an organization. But really, we're all decision makers, from our coworkers to our spouses to parents to grandparents. We all have everyday decisions. And with the complication that is technology, we have a lot more inputs and a lot more decisions to make. And as complicated as all of those extra inputs are, it also requires us to really get more information over many different topics to make good informed decisions. As a general rule, people make decisions based on their worldview. And that worldview is something that's changing as we continue to grow and get older. Brie mentions in the article and in the video, if your worldview hasn't changed from this time last year, you really aren't learning. And so it's something that was a little bit of a challenge to me, that we should be continually growing and learning as we have to make these decisions. So there's several different aspects that can really affect our worldview. These include economics, how you were raised, what your current living situation is, your psychology, your relationships, with different people, with your family, neuroscience and different chemicals in the brain, and your biology, your philosophy, your life philosophy, maybe the philosophy or religion you grew up with, all sort of play a role in your worldview and how you perceive things, and as a result, your connections that you draw from them. These factors with your experiences create heuristics and biases. Now, heuristics is basically a fancy word for rule of thumb. So think of it as when you throw something in the microwave. As a general rule, you can just throw it in there. You don't look for directions, and you know what you're doing most of the time. It might be when you're on a way to a meeting and you're trying to decide whether you have enough time to stop for a cup of coffee. You don't have exact times. You don't know exactly how long a line might be at Starbucks, but as a rule of thumb, you can sort of gauge that type of thing. 95% of the time, these types of things are very beneficial for us as we go throughout the day. We don't really think of them, but they help us make decisions. Now, the issue really comes in when we get into biases. And biases are really created almost by our brain, artificially either drawing connections or creating things that aren't actually there, that don't exist. And then we start to make decisions based on basically artificial ideas that really aren't consistent with real life. For an example, If you've ever woken up from, say, a dream, angry at a spouse or a child or a parent, and in actuality, everything that you're absolutely upset about happened all in your mind. They did nothing wrong, and yet you can't help but be very angry, all because of what happened in your dream or in your mind. And that's sort of how our mind works, and that's the type of artificial things that happen to us and games that our mind plays on us, and they create these biases, most of which we're not even aware of, and that's really the most dangerous part of it. An example of this would be you're, hiring somebody for your company. Well, that's, a decision that needs to be well thought out. It could be 5, 10, 20 years that that person is involved with your company. So it's a very important decision. You might see this just as a sports fan. I think of it with Drew Brees or Russell Wilson, that are quarterbacks that were considered short, so they weren't drafted by a lot of teams, and they've gone on to have extremely successful careers. But teams have also missed out on them because they simply ruled them out because of a bias, because they didn't feel like they were tall enough. And so these biases can really negatively affect you in your decision making. Now, for the future of neuroscience and leadership, there's a lot of progress that will be made, and we're really excited about based on the different things that we see coming down the pipeline. There's new inputs of research with our ability to do brain studies, brain imaging, seeing how the brain lights up when it's given different types of decisions to make, and what part of our brains we use to make certain decisions. Behavioral data that's within a scientific setting, that's controlled, allows us to see really accurate feedback on decisions that are made. And then we're just getting more and more access to real data that we haven't had before because of all the data mining and everything that goes in with the internet, and how people are able to collect data on us. There's also a cross current of different disciplines working together and coming together for the very nature of figuring out how decision making works, from chemists and chemistry to economists to psychologists to philosophers, all interested in this whole decision making process, which gives us one, unique perspectives on different data sets, but it also allows us to see cross currents within those data sets and see how those things correlate. So in conclusion, in about 10 to 15 years, we expect to have a really quality model on how we make decisions as a human, how the brain works to support those decisions, and what goes into affecting them. We're really in a unique position that for the first time in history, information and data is not the bottleneck that holds us back from making a decision. For the most part, whatever data we need access to make a decision, we have access to. And really the bottleneck comes down to, can we ask the right questions to get the data to translate into the data that we need? And once we can ask the right questions, we're able to unlock the information behind the data. So there's a lot of progress still to be made within decision making and the data and the science behind it. But overall, we're extremely optimistic about the future that is behind it. And that's all. Hope everyone has a great night.